Hello and welcome to Sami Parvez show. Today I'm joined by Rodney Taylor, the leader of the Christian Heritage Party. We will be discussing about the goals of his party, liberal government spending, the mass immigration and diversity, equity, inclusion, job quota system, the foreign interference, and much more. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, to joining me on Sami Parvez show. It's a great pleasure to have you here.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for reaching out. We always like to let as many people know about our party, and so we appreciate you including us in your scheduling.
My pleasure, sir. So, could you please tell me about background of yourself? What inspired you to join Christian Heritage Party, and what is all about like Christian Heritage Party is all about?
Sure, sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was raised as a young person in the United States. My dad was involved in the civil rights movement. He marched with Martin Luther King, the Selma to Montgomery March. And so he was involved in a lot of political things. This was in the 60s. During those years, John Kennedy was assassinated and Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. And we were very concerned about, the direction the country was going. I was just a teenager, but my dad would be writing a lot of letters to the president and to senators and very concerned about the direction. So I think I got from him the understanding that as citizens of our country, we should be involved, we should be engaged, not leave it to other people, but on important issues, we should speak out, even when those issues are not necessarily popular.
Yeah.
So my family then moved to Canada in the mid 70s, I guess. No, I'm sorry, 68, 68, 69. We moved to Canada, and I became a citizen in mid 70s. And in Canada, well, then I became a Christian after I was married. So kind of a long story how it all happened, but I met my wife in the Kootenays, southern British Columbia, in 19. We were married in 1974. So tomorrow is our 50th wedding anniversary, and after we were married, my wife was already a Christian, and I was exposed to some really good people that shared things with me. We talked about a lot of aspects of life and faith and worldview and responsibility as citizens, and I became a Christian. And so then we uh, we lived in southern BC. We moved up to Smithers, British Columbia, where I live now, in Telkwa, near Smithers. Then we
Yeah.
moved to Alberta for 12 years.
Wow.
I worked on the railroad there, I pounding spikes and changing rails and things like that
Mhm.
for about 6 years. I went to Bible school there at a place called Living Faith Renewal Center. We went there for a couple of years, and then we moved back up to Smithers, where we live now. Where we live in Telkwa, a small village in northern British Columbia.
Mhm.
And I worked in the lumber industry for about 25 years. I became a lumber grader. I worked in quality control. I was a shift supervisor. I ran equipment,
Mhm.
all the things involved with producing high quality lumber. Even we did lumber for the Japanese market as well, for traditional Japanese homes. And during that time, as a Christian, I became concerned. My wife and I both became concerned about the loss of respect for life in
Mhm.
Canada, and especially the abortion issue, which we discovered that in Canada, about 100,000 babies are killed by abortion every year.
Mhm.
And and we other issues that were coming up too regarding sexual issues, the LGBT movement,
Mhm.
and we certainly believe that God designed. First of all, He gave us life. Though life is a precious gift, we shouldn't throw it away. We shouldn't let others throw it away.
Mhm.
And then we believe God designed a family, a
Mhm.
man and a woman and children to be the building blocks of society. I guess following my dad's example, I started writing letters to the paper and letters to politicians and so on.
Mhm.
And then in 1987, my wife went to a meeting. Was the founding leader of the Christian Heritage Party came to our little town. I was working night shift at the time, and his name was Ed Van Woudenberg. And so we learned about the Christian Heritage Party. And, you know, some people say, well, Christian is kind of narrow, but the reality is that the laws in Canada, our justice system, our democracy, our Western style democracy is based on Christian values. And so some of those things, you don't have to be a Christian to benefit from Christian values, Christian heritage. So
Mhm.
our uh, our Charter of Rights and Freedoms that was introduced by during the time of Pierre Elliott Trudeau
Yep.
begins with the phrase, Canada is founded on principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law.
Yep.
And so, you know, we believe that uh, the Ten Commandments and the Golden Rule are good for everybody, not just for Christians.
Yep.
So that's kind of the Christian Heritage Party began because the founders before our time had worked in the big parties, the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party at the time, and maybe the NDP. And they found that when they helped someone get elected, they expected that person to stand up for their beliefs, for life and family and freedom. And they found out that those people, when they got to Ottawa, quite often the party leader did not want them talking about things like abortion and gender issues.
Yep.
And so they would be silenced. So the founders of our party said, you know what? We need our own party, a party dedicated to life, family, and freedom. And so they began this political party. We became a part of it. And in around the year, in 1993, I decided to run for the nomination as a candidate. I
Mhm.
was not selected at the time, but even though I wasn't the candidate, I came to the realization that in the great Western countries that we live in, Canada, the United States, England, that it's possible for a person who carries a lunch bucket in the morning to a job, a laboring job, there's no legal reason why that person can't become a member of parliament or even a prime minister.
Yep.
You don't need lengthy credentials,
Mhm.
but if you care about the country and you have an idea what's good for people, what's good for our communities, you should be able to serve in Parliament and serve the people of Canada. So that's I've given you a long story about myself and the party, but that's where we came to be where we are today.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you, all the details you shared, and as you mentioned, you and your like wife will be celebrating tomorrow, like 50th anniversary of your wedding. Wishing you a very happy anniversary to you both, and
Yeah,
it seems like
thank,
it is my
thank
pleasure.
you.
Yeah,
Well, it's great. It's exciting. You know, when you start out, when you're first married, you're not thinking about 50 years later.
yeah.
But God has been good to us, and we
Mhm.
love the country we live in. We love our province,
Mhm.
and we love the families and the friends that we have.
Mhm.
Canada is a wonderful place, but we are concerned about what's happening to the country. The national debt, of course, is a big concern.
Mhm.
Basically, when the government spends money it doesn't have and runs deficits, it's like stealing money from our children and grandchildren.
Mhm.
And so we want to do what we can to put the brakes on
Mhm.
big government and big spending.
Yeah. So you mentioned like people work from liberals, conservative, NDP were silent. They cannot talk about like you know Christianity or like beliefs, right? Like is in a faith, like many faith, not only Christian, maybe Jewish, Muslims, or other faith also are concerned about other sexual gender like LGBTQ or transgender or like something like that. It means they are keep bringing to, even though they are being taught in schools. There was a protest last year regarding these regulation, and many are concerned about these things. But how do you see it? Do we have it from day one, or just we have it recently since Justin Trudeau he took the office? We have seen like things are changing rapidly. He just keeps bringing up. I don't know, like you recall, like there was then a debate like I think last week or a couple of weeks ago about the survivors, it means domestic abuse or survival. There was a hearing in the committee, so liberal MP brought up like abortion should be discussed on that committee, though it was not concerned, and those are to educate, even though one was survivor of a domestic abuse, they walked away. So it seems like this is disgusting. So how do you see it from, as you have been like living in Canada, and it means you are working for these things, and your party is educating for women's rights, and two sexual like should be just men and women. But it seems like we are going another direction, so how do you see these things?
Well, on abortion particularly, Justin Trudeau has made it really clear he does not allow any of his members of parliament to speak on that issue, not from a pro-life point of view.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a change. You can see what happened. Like there were several of Liberal MPs, even when Justin Trudeau took office, there were several Liberal MPs that still considered themselves pro-life. John McKay, who's been in there for a long time,
Yeah.
but they've been silenced under
Mhm.
Trudeau, and of course they've allowed themselves to be silenced. I don't take all the responsibility off them. I think if you are a member of parliament and you tell people what you believe when you're being elected
Yeah.
and re-elected and re-elected, if you tell people where your convictions are, then if your leader tells you to stop talking about that, I think you have a responsibility to
Mhm.
ignore that command. You're elected by the people. You're not elected by your leader, right?
Yes.
And so I would like to see people like John McKay return to their convictions and speak boldly in defense of innocent human life.
Mhm.
Because I think if we're not going to defend innocent human life, what kind of a country do we have? I say that our nation is polluted with innocent blood. That's a Bible phrase,
Mhm.
but people worry about pollution with carbon dioxide,
Yeah.
which is actually a harmless gas that's good for plants or whatever. That's not pollution at all, but polluted with innocent blood, our moral environment is polluted. The minds of our upcoming generation has been distorted to think that human life can be taken.
Mhm.
So it's true that our national consensus right now, I think that people have gone along with that idea that even that abortion is a woman's right, which it is not. There's nothing in the Constitution that gives the right to kill your baby, and they've tried to make it into a men's and women's issue. And unfortunately, that's not really the case. They say about 60% of women who have an abortion are doing so under pressure from a boyfriend or husband. So it's not like a woman's right. And then MP Kathy Wagenthal, who's a conservative MP for whom we have a lot of respect,
Mhm.
she has brought forward a bill against sex selective abortion because there are babies that are killed in the country just because they're
Mhm.
girls. And
One.
that's
Yeah.
really tragic.
Yeah.
But even on that issue, which should be a woman's issue, to protect girls from being killed just because they're girls, the Liberals and the NDP and the Bloc and the Greens have all pulled away from that. Oh, we don't want to talk about that.
Mhm.
And you'd think we could find agreement, and there should be, the House of Commons, the federal parliament,
Yeah.
there should be a possibility for conservatives, liberals, NDP, and the bloc to agree on things. If you know, we certainly give credit when a conservative member of parliament does something good. We
Mhm.
want them to know that we appreciate them.
Yeah.
When they do something bad, we want to hold their feet to the fire and let them know that
Yeah.
that's not acceptable in this country. But the breakdown in civility in the House of Commons, the extreme partisan posturing that goes on, where liberals and conservatives seem like they have to be always on the battleground instead of working together to do what's good for the Canadian people,
Mhm.
is a tragedy. And what I've found in recent times in under this Trudeau government, um, it seems like the members of his cabinet, the members of his caucus, they feel compelled just to defend the government, even when it does something bad.
Mhm.
And I think that their party is weaker for it. Yeah, they have party discipline so that they can be whipped into shape, and they can be forced to do whatever the prime minister and his inner circle decide. But that's not a healthy system. Those members of parliament, whether they're liberals, conservatives, NDP, they have been elected by the people in a particular district.
Mhm.
In many cases, I think wrongly elected. They should have chosen different ones, but nevertheless, they were put there by the will of the people, and they should be able to speak up, even within their own party. When they see something wrong, they should not be afraid to talk about it in the right setting, in the right tone of voice, but they should be able to represent the people who elected them, not just their party leader.
Mhm. Yeah, but as you mentioned, like the members are not allowed to speak, like especially this abortion issue or LGBT rights or other like, like, and also they always defend their leaders. But yeah, we know these things are happening in liberal government or just in Trudeau's caucus, but we also see the same thing in Piri caucus, conservative caucus. They mostly like keep it concerned, like I remember I was watching closely that SOGI like movement, I'm pretty sure you recall that movement which was against many from all backgrounds of religion group came together to protest about this gender issue. This should not be taught in school, but conservative like leader instructed is caucus member do not speak about this issue because it would cost them vote, even though they know about this thing because there are many people who talks about more about LGBTQ rights, since so but don't you think? I know you are representing Christian Heritage Party, and but as you said that it means those folks are working there. It means they are representing you as well, so they need to speak out. But we don't see a concrete step or from Conservative Party to speak on Canadian values or Christian values as I also need to bring up like Canada is a majority population is Christian of faith people. It means they identify as Christian, like 20 million people according to 2021 census. But still, we don't see it. It seems like they are keep putting Christians in a minority situation. Like we also saw. So this could be another issue with burning of the churches. But my question was regarding it is not only liberals or NDP and Bloc, always also the conservatives are also silent on these issues.
Uh,
So what do you take from this?
yeah, absolutely. There's MP Arnold Viersen. You might have followed his story. He's in northern Alberta,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a great guy. He's stood up for a lot of the same values that we have. And just recently, he allowed himself to be interviewed by a liberal member of parliament,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which I think was, well, his own party might have thought that was a bad thing to do, but I thought that is commendable that he was willing to talk to someone from the other side of the aisle.
Yeah.
And he was quite blunt and honest about his beliefs. Yeah, he said, I'm pro-life. He said,
Mm,
I would vote against abortion if I had the opportunity. And
mhm,
even on same-sex marriage, which
mm,
came into Canada in 2005, he said, yeah, I would vote to restore traditional marriage. And he immediately, well, of course, the media, mass media came after him big time, hammer and tongs.
mm,
But his own leader, Pierre Poilievre, also felt he had to stand up and say, "Well, I don't agree with the position taken by my member of parliament.
mhm.
And, it doesn't represent me. He doesn't represent the party." And in a way, I kind of appreciate that Pierre Poilievre felt he had to express himself because his position is absolutely clear now. He said, I am pro-choice, which means
Yep.
pro-abortion.
Mhm.
And he said, I'm pro same-sex marriage, which means basically he's pro-LGBT.
Yep.
And so Arnold Viersen basically, got taken to the woodshed over that statement.
Mhm.
And, but I commend Mr. Viersen MP Viersen for taking his stand, for speaking out publicly. And he should, he should not allow himself to be silenced by Mr. Poilievre. But you know what that tells me also about the Conservative Party? Mr. Poilievre again was elected by a majority of, maybe not of the members, but a majority of the delegates to the Conservative Convention. He was chosen by a majority, and they knew that he was pro-choice at the time. They knew that he was, pro-LGBT. So the people that now want to vote for the Conservative Party in a desperate move to get rid of Justin
Yes, sir.
Trudeau,
Yep.
they should do some self inspection, soul searching, and
Mhm.
say, well, why did we elect a guy that we don't agree with, and why did we choose him to be leader? And I know the reason why is he's a very astute, articulate, energetic, good-looking younger person, and yeah, he's done a good job in the House of Commons of keeping Justin Trudeau kind of back on his heels regarding the economy and whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, but we think the moral issues, well, we think everything is a moral issue, but the issues around health and personal integrity and the protection of innocent human life are so important
Mhm.
uh, that we can't ignore them when we vote.
Mhm. And do you like as you are representing Christian Heritage Party, you are the leader of that party, but it means the smaller parties like yours are not getting a chance to get one person get elected to represent them or other voices in the House of Commons. So do you believe the media is playing a critical role for not happening this thing, like a smaller party, because they don't get much coverage what the mainstream or main parties like get, like such as liberals, NDP, and conservative, always whenever they are a candidate would be chosen. So those would be like, it would be a breaking news. Always they talks about it. Recently in Montreal, there will be a by-election on September 16th. So it means all were highlighted, but we don't see such things from the smaller parties. So do you believe the mainstream media is playing a role so for not being a voice for the smaller parties?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a couple of reasons for it. Number one, I think the mainstream media, and let's get specific, CBC particularly, the
Yeah.
state-funded broadcaster, we pay their bills, and we pay for a whole lot of stuff that they don't need, including, huge bonuses for their staff,
Mhm.
in spite of their losing viewership. But they have been pushing the LGBT agenda and abortion rights and so forth for a long, long time, and we're paying for it. I'm paying for it. I don't agree with them at all, and yet my taxes go to support the left-wing media. CBC is just one, but there's kind of the biggest player.
Yeah.
But we're also paying money to, like the CTV and Globe and Mail and some of these other big outlets. And when they're getting money from a liberal government, there's no way that they can give unbiased coverage, right? And same, they're also being, a lot of them get big money from the pharmaceutical companies as well, Pfizer and Moderna. So that also, there's a reason that the Bible is against taking bribes. If a judge takes a bribe, accepts money from a person who's on trial, that person is not going to get a fair trial. They're going to get a trial biased by their gift. And when the media takes this money, it's like a bribe. And now that's not the only reason they are that way. I think they have been pushing this agenda for many, many years, and they've developed a corporate culture that leans in that direction. I think it's journalists in general, with some wonderful exceptions, are like yourself and the Rebel News and a few others, True North, take a different approach. But these ones are pushing our society in a certain direction. And when it comes to the reporting the news on political events, the small parties get really, really small coverage in the big media. So when CBC follows Pierre Poilievre around, even on a daily basis now, but especially during an election, and they follow Justin Trudeau around and Jagmeet Singh, that is like giving those parties millions of dollars of taxpayer money of free advertising. Like they buy advertising, and of course that's a direct contribution, because after these big elections, these parties that got over 10% of the vote, there's like a cycle of a self-fulfilling prophecy, because I think after the 2015 election, both the conservatives and the liberals each got about $20 million from taxpayers as what they call a rebate for their campaign spending. We don't get any of that money, not one penny. And yet, and now they get all this free advertising on top of it. They get, so when CBC doesn't talk about the Christian Heritage Party or the Animal Protection Party or the Communist Party, I mean, I don't agree with these other small parties, except on this point, they deserve fair treatment by the media. And we're all, the small parties are all running an uphill battle because we do not have the funds, the taxpayer funds, and we do not get the free publicity. So definitely the big media is influencing the results of the election. I'm a lot more concerned about that than I am about foreign interference. Foreign interference is a real thing, and we can get to the bottom of it. But internal interference by the big media doing the will of the liberal government is a huge thing.
Yeah, it seems like liberal is buying in media, like I think Andrew Quinn, like Globe and Mail, is a huge name, is great journalist. He always write on everything. So he wrote, it means those money are destroying media. We don't need money, like media bailout. Yesterday he wrote. So it seems like, but liberal government is keep giving money to media. It seems like they are like opposition leader always calls like mainstream media like CTV, CBC. So they are a spokesperson of PMO. But this is just like a joke. But he says says I heard him saying many times, but it seems like it is spending too much. And the other thing is CBC is getting big bonuses for its executives, even though a CEO and president of CBC still does not rule out about giving executive bonuses, even though they took. I don't know what the hell is going on with these things. And also, I heard Peter's main bridge, the great Canadian journalist, So he also talks about, I just listened some words from him. He was talking to CBC about CBC board. It means he says that the executives are never have been journalists, It means they don't have any experience, like CBC board. They don't have any journalism experience. They were put there, so they don't know what to do with those money they receive from the government. So these things are happening. And also, like in CTV and global news, and we also saw the bill fired thousands of or hundreds of journalists. I think I don't recall the exact numbers of CTV, which is run by Bill, which is a organization of Bill. So it means they took money, but then they fired those journalists. But despite that, they keep receiving taxpayer funds, but which is not okay for a democratic country like Canada. And when it comes to issues like for small parties, so they don't give coverage much, and also they highlight what government wants, as you mentioned, like this gender or LGBTQ issues, or other, like it mean whatever goes against of Christian heritage. So they just keeps talking about highlighting these issues, like they they are not very concerned about those things. And I also need to know, like, what's your point of view? We have seen also DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, like hiring people based on that. Like Justin Trudeau always hired like folks based on DI. He past appointed his cabinet 50-50, like women and men. So it is not, I don't say I'm against of those men and women were hired, but you should not hire anyone because of its, don't hire a woman or men, though woman is not much qualified. So what's your take? So hiring on DEI?
You nailed it on the head there. I totally agree with you. When especially running the government of Canada, which is supposed to be representing us and doing things that are good for the country, we should be hiring the most qualified people, men, women, regardless of race, ethnicity, background, because we need people who know what's going on. We need people who know how to budget, for one thing. Like Justin Trudeau famously said, the budget will balance itself. Well, it has not balanced itself, and so the DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, is wrong-headed on its face. Now, we believe in equality and justice and fairness for every Canadian citizen, whether male or female, whether whatever race or background they have, they should all have equal opportunity. But putting them in a position because of a race or because of gender or because of gender orientation is certainly a wrong approach. It means we have less qualified people in many cases, and it sends a wrong signal to our young people.
Mhm.
I have heard of, good qualified people who wanted to apply to the RCMP
Yeah.
or to the military, and they've been turned down because they didn't fit into one of these DEI
Okay.
specified categories. Well,
Mhm.
that's ridiculous. If you have we're having a hard time finding good people for police forces, especially when the police forces have been so abused and misused by the current governments.
Yeah.
But when someone wants to get into it, they have the qualifications, the passion, they want to do a good job, they care about justice.
Mhm.
Those are the kind of people we need in those positions, not someone who happens to fit a certain DEI category.
Mhm. Yeah, and earlier you were bringing up this. We have internal issues also like foreign interference. So we know like there is a report like which says that 11 MPs colluded. I mean, or collaborated with foreign government, especially like we know like there were interference in 2019 and 2021 elections, like China specifically interfered. There could be other names like Iran or Russia or maybe
Yeah.
India or Pakistan. You know, like they always just to bring up their own favorite candidate for their like domestic benefits. You know, like those countries.
Right.
But we don't see it. And whenever when Justin Trudeau back in, I'm pretty sure you recall back in when two top scientists were fired from Winnipeg lab when Justin Trudeau was questioned about those Chinese scientists. So he called out the opposition MPs. They are spreading misinformation and disinformation, and also specifically you are raising anti-Asian racism. You know, this is not about racism. If you call out a Chinese communist representative, it means this is not about Chinese Canadians, it is about Chinese regime. So how do you take it? So we won't have the names. I don't know when we have them. So there is no guarantee. So how do you take this as the leader of a party?
Well, Justin Trudeau has survived so many scandals, ad scam, go back to SNC Lavalin and so on, and various things. But, in election law, electoral finance is a very strictly controlled aspect of elections. As a member of the Christian Heritage Party, we're not allowed to accept more than $20 in cash at a time. That's the rule. And you only can accept cash, or you can only accept donations from Canadian citizens or permanent residents. So
Yeah.
money coming that is floated into the country through from a foreign government, for one thing, or from the liberal government, and liberal like SNC Lavalin.
Yeah.
One of the things that happened with them uh, that was not talked about very much at all is they were giving money to their employees to make donations to political parties, specifically the Liberal Party of Canada. That is highly illegal. If anyone else did that, they would probably be behind bars.
Yeah.
Their party would be deregistered. Candidates would no longer be allowed to run for that party. And here we have members of parliament today who benefited from foreign money illegally coming into their campaigns. And it's our prime minister treats it like, oh, there's nothing going on there, nothing to see. Let's move along because and somehow that the media has tolerated that. Yeah, they talk about it, but our nation should be in an uproar about foreign funding or illegal contributions coming from any source, including foreign funding. But certainly SNC Lavalin, that was a part that never was discussed very much, and yet they broke electoral finance laws, and that should have been front page news for weeks.
Yeah, it seems like it was biased, even though we have a top Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Madam Jody Wilson-Raybould, who has stood up like it means she did not let the government or prime minister should dictate what should an attorney general and minister of justice to do, you know. But she lost her job. It means she sacrificed everything to standing up for rule of law. But it seems like we don't see a rule of laws in Canada. So there are two types of rule of laws, one for like other individual and one for liberal prime minister.
Yeah.
So it means this is extremely strange. So what do you take as a leader of a party? So is Canada is it means uh erect or occupied, I would say. It means it is controlled by other foreign powers, under the Justin Trudeau's leadership. Or did we see anything in the past? So you have been enrolled these things. So have you seen something before 2015, or just we are seeing since 2015?
Well, we've been going down the road for a long time. I think, 2005, for instance, when same-sex marriage was passed by Parliament, that was originally the door was open for that by judgments made in three provinces having to do, like it seems kind of innocuous. If you talk about it before it comes to pass, you're seen as a, you're an alarmist. Oh no, it's not going to get that bad. In 1999, Parliament voted overwhelmingly against same-sex marriage. In
Mm-hmm.
2005, the government at the time passed same-sex marriage, and now it is treated as, oh, a fait accompli. You're never going to undo that. That's just fairness and justice. But the media has a lot to do with that. Government has a lot to do with that. But the voters have a responsibility not to turn a blind eye to these abuses of political power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Liberal government under Justin Trudeau has gotten away with an awful lot. These scandals, his trips to vacations to visit his buddies, his $6,000 a night hotel rooms. People have no excuse not to know how bad it is.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just want to say, jump in with something here. It's on a side note, doesn't quite follow into this question, but we also oppose the carbon tax. I know Pierre Poilievre has become well known for Axe the Tax.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we agree with him on that, but we take it a step farther. We think we not only have to axe the tax,
Yeah.
but we have to defend carbon dioxide.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we have to come against the lie that carbon dioxide is bad, right? So Pierre Poilievre is talking about alternative ways of managing carbon, carbon sequestration and things like that. No, we say that whole concept is wrong, and we need to stand up for carbon dioxide and say that is not our enemy.
Mm-hmm.
There are types of pollution that are bad for our country, and we need to address them, whether it's chemicals in agriculture, some of the things that happen there. Certainly in our moral environment, we need to stand up for the protection of morals for our young people.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but anyway, things get the way they are. Things have gotten this way little by little, here a little, there a little. When they passed same-sex marriage by a very small majority passed it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, if you speak against it, you're seen as an outlier. By the way, we did participate in the March for Children, March of a Million.
Mm-hmm.
Camille El-Sheikh was the great sponsor, kind of the initiator of that
Yeah.
uh, program last fall, and I was happy to be there with him and to meet with him
Mm-hmm.
to represent our party and stand with him and with others for the defense of innocence of children in public school system. So,
Mm-hmm.
by
Yeah.
the way, we
Mm-hmm.
have our convention is coming up next week in Ancaster. We have every 3 years national convention,
Mm-hmm.
and this one will be at Redeemer University. We're renting that facility.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our guests is going to be Josh Alexander, the young
Yeah.
uh, high school student who stood up to protect his fellow female classmates from being subjected to having men in their washrooms and so on. And
Yeah.
so we stand with all those who have the courage of their convictions and stand for life, family, and freedom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Yeah, it happened. I recall like what Josh what happened to Josh Alexander. You know, he was kicked out from the school for saying there are only two sexes. And let's jump to another topic with respect to immigration. So it is being debated too much, and currently the Liberal government is also changing the laws and the rules and regulation for immigration. So how do you see it? So how do you, is your party is a pro-immigration, or I would say so? How do you see the immigration system, and do you support mass immigration?
No, yeah, that's a very good question. I myself am an immigrant. My family moved up from the United States in the late 60s. And um, so, immigration is an important part of Canada's culture, our development. We would not be the nation we are today
Yeah,
if it weren't for immigration, legal immigration.
yeah,
But first of all, illegal immigration is illegal and should not be tolerated. We have a process by which people can enter the country legally
yeah.
and become residents and then citizens, work permits, and student visas, and so on. Um, but right now, it's crystal clear to me and many that we have too much immigration, too many people coming into the country in a year, and it's affected our housing situation, housing affordability, availability, and so on. The government has no business. Well, the Roxham Road thing was a terrible
Mm-hmm.
kind of an aspect of that where Justin Trudeau basically and the people working under him, right down to the RCMP, turned a blind eye
Yeah.
to people illegally entering the country. Who knows who came in, you know? Um, the United States is facing, of course, a real crisis at their border. They have somewhere between 10 and 20 million, and nobody really knows how many for sure,
Yeah.
illegal migrants, some of whom are known terrorists and known criminals.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who's all come into Canada, but we need to have a moratorium on mass immigration. We need to slow down until at least we can provide adequate housing.
Mm-hmm.
We also would put an end to foreign purchases of Canadian homes.
Yeah.
Uh, we have a process for coming into the country, and right now, foreign purchases of homes, businesses, and land have driven up prices
Mm-hmm.
where Canadians, people born and raised in this country, cannot afford to live, for instance, in Vancouver or Toronto, those places. So it we need to make sure that when we say these things, we know that we will be accused by the Liberals of being racist or discriminate against ethnic values and so on. And that is far from the case. But as a country, we have a responsibility to our citizens that are in the country today
Mm-hmm.
to manage our resources in such a way that young people can afford to buy a home, that there's jobs for them, that they can, for businesses, that they can afford wages for the people that are working for them. Our country has been, let's say, our culture has been negatively impacted by the amount of uh, new residents in the country who don't speak the language, don't have the the cultural values that Canadians were raised with.
Mm-hmm.
And we can absorb a certain number, but we can't absorb an infinite number. And right now, this government, and I'm sure that part of the reason is they feel that those coming into the country will be so grateful for
Mm-hmm.
having been permitted into the country that they'll automatically vote the Liberals back in, and that's a danger when you get election fraud and things like that are going on. This government, there's no moral standards for this government when it comes to elections or uh, finances. And our national debt is out of control, and it's partly because of the way the government has handled immigration, housing, the COVID crisis, and the DEI agenda. So many reasons, but but we need to get control of this business again.
Mhm.
Immigration is just one of the many issues, and we're not against people coming in from any place in the world where they want to come from, but we should be selecting the people who can also be a benefit to Canada.
Mhm.
Um, that's if you're running a company, you have to hire the people that have the skills.
Yes.
And when we're letting people into our country, we want to bring people in who will make a contribution one way or another to our national economy, to our culture, and we can't do it at the pace we've been doing it now. We can't absorb that many people and provide housing and all that without damaging our country.
Mhm. So, do you think there should be a change, or there should be more requirement, as you mentioned, with respect to immigration? We need more skills people. You know, like if you run a company, so you need a skills worker. And also, as you mentioned, yeah, everyone knows that many people are coming in who cannot speak English or French, which are bilingual languages or official languages of Canada. You know, like you must know either one of those languages, but they don't know. But it seems like should there be a tougher stance or tougher regulation to bring up the more qualified people than the unqualified or undeserving.
Yeah, no, of course there's two things. There's immigration and there's refugees. And there is as a Christian, of course, I know there's a time when opening your door to someone who is in danger or struggling due to earthquakes and various things that have happened,
Mhm.
wars in some cases. There's a time for bringing people in, not based on what they can do for the country, but based on their desperate need.
Yeah.
Of course, Canada cannot bring in every person in the world who is in desperate need. We have to recognize that we have limits.
Mhm.
All of us want to be generous, helping our neighbors, but we have to recognize how much can we do without hurting the Canadian economy, right? So there's that. But I think on our immigration side, we should be focused on bringing in the best and the brightest, people with medical backgrounds, and yeah, language is something that's certainly important. But I think the skills, so that because people can learn languages and they
Mhm.
will learn languages. You obviously have learned language. I was privileged to have been born into English speaking family, so I don't I didn't have to learn the Canadian language except maybe A and
Mhm.
a few
Ah.
things like yeah. But no, the main thrust of our immigration, and it has to be a lot lower numbers than have been coming in recent years. We just don't have even the housing for them. But they should be people who are going to make a contribution to the country and come in with skills. And it used to be that way. And this government has turned that upside down and is basically, I think they've been opening the floodgates mainly to people they think would be potential voters for the Liberal Party. And
Yeah.
of course, that's not a good way to look at things.
Mm-hmm. And as you earlier mentioned, like about the government spending, so government is keep spending more. It seems like any government since World War II did not spend much. What this government did, and our deficit reached or to I believe $1.4 trillion. So how you are going to pay it is there is a good quote from Trudeau back in I think 2013. He said the budget will balance itself. It did not balance itself. The budget won't balance itself. Like so you need to do something, and you need to cut your spending. And we also saw the MPs are getting a raise every year. Since 2020 when during COVID-19 many people were struggling. The businesses were being shut down, but MP say no, we deserve a raise. But with respect to spending and controlling and mass immigration, like bringing illegal immigrants, so those are costing also taxpayers money. There was a recent report around, I don't know, 224 or something like that money, like it means were given to each individual every day. I believe it would cost, and the government also purchased or trying to purchase or have those 4,000, I believe, hotels for illegal immigrants until their cases should be dealt. And so what do you say, or what's your reaction? So what should be done to control the spending and balancing the budget?
Well, of course, the biggest area of spending probably is the government has increased in size by 42% under Trudeau.
Yeah.
So that's 42% more government workers earning
Yeah.
pensions, bonuses and whatever.
Yeah.
And we believe in a smaller, more efficient, more accountable government, transparent.
Yeah.
And of course, that is a tough sell when on the campaign trail,
Mhm.
especially if you're one of those people who's been hired by the government, you don't want to hear someone saying we're going to have to cut, spending on government workers. But the reality is, we can't afford what we're doing.
Mhm.
Some of those programs, many of those programs can be cut and should be cut. A lot of this stuff going into LGBT promotion and pride parades and things like that.
Mhm.
And the flying of the prime minister and a huge entourage to
Yeah.
Davos, to WEF, and to climate conferences. This is money that's just down the tubes. We don't get anything back for it. So we have to cut spending. There's no doubt, no way around it, no doubt about it. If we don't cut spending,
Mhm.
Canada will be broke. Right now, today, we are paying $125 million every single day in interest on the national debt.
Mhm.
I can think of a much better use for $125 million a day.
Mhm.
That's I think the Canadian Taxpayers Federation points out it's about $1 billion a week,
Yeah.
and we just can't afford it. So the Christian Heritage Party has a policy of mandatory balanced budgets. So uh, if we were the party in power, we would have to live within our budget. We would introduce legislation to that any government would have to live within its budget. In other words, if you don't want to raise taxes to cover that cost, then you can't afford it. And who wants to raise taxes? We want to lower taxes,
Yeah.
but until we pay off that national debt, how can we? And I think when we're taxing businesses, a lot of the responsibility for inflation has to do with partly with the government spending and partly with the carbon tax.
Mhm.
Carbon tax has raised the cost of everything because everything that you buy at a store
Yeah.
gets delivered by a trucker who's paying carbon tax.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and it doesn't do anything for the environment, but it certainly hurts people's pocketbook. So um, yeah, there's a lot to say about the economy and what the government should do, but we would have to cut spending. There's no way around it. The cutting spending is never a painless deal.
Mhm.
There will be pain involved, but if we don't, short-term pain for long-term gain is kind of where we have to take the approach that if we don't cut spending, we're going to go completely broke and nobody will have a job. So.
Mhm. So you said it mean Canadian like Christian Heritage Party would try to balance budget. So rather than paying like it was $125 million, I believe you said. So it means rather than paying each day, so you think we have to raise the taxes to balancing the budget and get rid of those deficit.
Well, I'm not in favor of raising taxes. I think we have to cut spending first, and the government. We're part of the reason we're in the trouble we're in is that because the governments have taken the easy way out instead of raising taxes, which would have been um, I mean, they did raise taxes anyway. The carbon tax is a good example, but they're not willing to raise the taxes enough to cover their deficits
Mhm.
because they know that they would be punished at the ballot box. Voters just
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah.
put up with it. So
Mhm.
So we have to cut, and I think cutting spending is the first place to start. And if I were an MP, I
Yeah.
would propose that MPs set the example by cutting their own salaries. They're now making over $200,000 a year, and they've given themselves a raise, or they've allowed that automatic raise to take place every year. I don't hear a lot of MPs complaining about getting these raises.
Mhm.
The Prime Minister now is over $400,000.
Yeah.
I think the government should set the example by saying we're willing to live on less. Let's cut. I'm not going to say how far they should cut, but I don't honestly know why the MPs need to make more than 100,000. So,
Yeah.
but probably that would be a tough sell in the House of Commons. But I would certainly put forward a bill to stop the automatic increase and to take a pay cut,
Mhm.
show Canadians that the government is on their side.
Mhm. Yeah, back in like this year, I wrote to all most of the MPs, to why you are getting a raise when Canadians cannot afford one-time meal, but I did not any response, and even though I spoke with my
Yeah.
own MP. But it mean I did not get a response. So what I supposed to get? It mean it seems like it mean everyone needs a raise. Like no one say, oh, I don't need those money. Everyone needs money. So
Yeah.
that's why. But it seems like everything is going up if they don't care about these things. And so what should be done, how these MPs or minister can be accountable other than a ballot box. We don't know yet, but it seems like if we don't go any election anytime now until April, in April again, they would get another bump.
Yeah. They should, they should be ashamed of themselves is what all I can say is that, and the Conservative Party, if they're, kind of the one party in Parliament that conservative means they should be trying to conserve,
Mhm.
trying to conserve not just the environment, but they should be conserving Canadians' tax dollars.
Yeah.
I would think that they should take the lead. Like I said, if we were in office, we would certainly be calling for a wage cut and absolutely an end to the automatic increases
Mhm.
um, in all kinds of things. There's automatic increases that they have built in to their own wages, and I think in some provinces to, alcohol taxes and whatever, so that once they build that in as an automatic,
Yeah.
then they feel like they don't have to take the heat when it goes up next year. Oh, that's just the way it is. But
Mhm.
no, you're still responsible. You could be putting forward a bill to say to cut your own wages. Why don't you do it, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and so, Mr. Taylor, do you have any message to Canadians from as the leader of Christian Heritage Party?
Well, we will be in an election next year. As far as we know, that will happen, and this government doesn't declare itself to be a government in perpetuity. And so we do have members across the country. We have some pockets where we have larger groupings of members, but we are looking for candidates right now, those who share our values and will be willing to stand with us on the as members of the Christian Heritage Party, promoting life, the protection of innocent human life from conception to natural death, family support for the traditional marriage between one man and one woman, and support for the protection of children in schools, of course, from the kind of indoctrination and manipulation that they've endured for the last few years on the gender issues. And then freedom of speech, freedom of conscience. I think doctors, nurses, journalists, MPs, uh, you know, every teachers deserve the freedom to follow their conscience, and they should not be coerced into participating in things that they find wrong. So, for instance, a doctor should not be coerced into participating in abortion or euthanasia or gender reassignment surgery. Right now in Canada, the provinces and the federal government are pushing people to do what they want them to do, not what people are governed by their own consciences want to do. So we are looking for candidates. We are going to do a training program. We're putting our team together for next year. And so you can reach us at chp.ca. That's our website. And let us know if you are interested in pursuing candidacy with us and you want to help us stand up for life, family, and freedom. We'd be happy to have you on the team.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Taylor. I will just leave it here, and it was a great discussion. So we have still more to discuss, but due to short time,
Well,
I hope I see you again.
Well, we will speak again, I'm sure. And yeah, we do a weekly podcast as well called CHP Talks. You can find it on Apple Podcasts or Google or whatever. Oh no, Apple Podcasts, Buzzsprout, Spotify, and you can also find it on our website at chp.ca. So I talk to people from different walks of life, and sometimes they're people from another party. I'm not averse to communicating with some of the MPs that are within existing parties in the House of Commons, but we want to talk about the issues, and we support people that are doing good things, and we want to expose the works of darkness and encourage people to vote their conscience next year. And if you don't have a good candidate in your district, a good pro-life, pro-family candidate, make sure there is one. It might be you, it might be somebody you know, but don't just vote for the lesser of two evils. Vote for the person who's going to represent your values. And I hope those values are aligned with ours: life, family, and freedom.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure.